All right, people, you know what time it is. It's Sunday. You're locked and loaded on the BAMA Elite Podcast Touchdown. Alabama Magazine, stop what you're doing and get to this right here because we got some cooking for you, the Alabama football fans and fans of college football in general. We're rocking and rolling with the three baddest men on the face of the planet. We got Justin Smith, the lead scouting and recruiting analyst for TDA. We got my man Patrick P. Money, Vegas man down, breaking news reporter for TDA. I'm yours truly, Stephen M. Smith of Touchdown Alabama Magazine. Before we get these things popping, got to remind you guys, so when you're not checking out the BAMA Elite Podcast, we know you love us, but when you're not checking us out, be sure to go to the Big Game College Football Podcast Network, an audio stream for the best college football coverage in the South. So when you're not checking out the Bama Elite on Thursdays and Sundays, be sure to check out the Big Game College Football Podcast Network audio stream, best college football coverage in the South. With that being said, Justin, man, what's happening with your brother? Happy Sunday.
Same to you, Steven. Always excited to get on about Elite with you and Pat, as always.
Patrick, what's going on, P, my man?
Yeah, happy Sunday to you. I can't really say that I'm having a happy Sunday because I just got done watching whatever the New England Patriots called offense against the Dolphins. So not off to a great start to the season, but I mean, I think some Alabama fans are feeling the same way about how their team played this weekend.
Well, Pat, I mean, at least, Alabama 2-0 as opposed to the Patriots at 0-1 right now. But let's get into this matchup, this recap with Texas. And none of us saw it happening the way it happened. I mean, Pat, you had Alabama covering. I had Alabama covering. Justin had it as well. None of us saw what took place Saturday to actually take place. We knew Steve Sarkisian would do different things to create matchups and get Quinn Ewers comfortable on the attack, but did not picture it the way it went down over the weekend. And the biggest takeaway for me is this right here. Alabama fans for the longest time have wanted one thing at quarterback. Give us somebody that when they on the field, we always have a chance to win a football game, no matter what the situation is. And this is no offense to guys like John Parker Wilson, Greg McElroy, A.J. McCarron, Jacob Coker, Blake Sims, those guys, even the Jalen Hurts, Tua Tagovailoa, and Mac Jones. A lot of those guys won national championships. But with Bryce Young, it's just, I don't care what the situation is. If 9 is on the field and he got the ball last and the ball is in his hands, you just feel like we about to win a football game. And we saw it last year against Auburn, where it was crazy in the Iron Bowl. And 9 just smiled like George Lopez. Hey, I got this. And 9 took him down the field and scored. Deja vu happens again. Bama down 19-17 with a minute and 27 to go. 9 on the field. Straight tunnel vision, takes you down there. Will Reichert makes the field goal. I mean, Pat, even though you don't want to put Bryce in those moments all the time, when he's in those moments, God, it feels good when you have a quarterback like that.
I mean, that's what really separates the good from the great. And he won the Heisman Trophy last year for a reason. He was fantastic in these really clutch situations like you brought up in the Iron Bowl. And listen, all the great quarterbacks do this, especially at the next level. When you talk about, the Brady's, the Mahomes, I'm not necessarily saying he's going to go on to have those kind of Hall of Fame careers just yet. But, I mean, that guy is special. A minute 20, and I think Alabama fans, even though they were down by 2, I think there's a lot of reason to feel comfortable when you put the ball back into Bryce Young's hands with over a minute on the clock. I mean, this guy, the way he eluded that last potential sack and just scrambled down the sideline for 20 yards, I mean, his knee was so close to being down in the backfield, and he just got out of there. I mean, the guy, like, it's hard to put into words, honestly, how clutch this guy is.
And what's crazy, Pat, before we get Justin jumping, here's the crazy part. Texas had a free blitz, and the guy literally thought, I got him. Bryce dips up under the guy and goes around the end for 20 yards. I'm like, the presence of mind and awareness that Bryce Young plays with, you just can't describe it. But Justin, go ahead with your thought there, man.
Justin might be a little bit caught up right now, but
Justin's kind of frozen. I think he's trying to understand the greatness of it all too. But as we're getting Justin here back in, Pat, just going from Bryce Young to the things that went wrong here in the matchup, and probably one of the first things that went wrong, the 15 penalties. Very uncharacteristic of an Alabama team under Nick Saban, the most of a Saban era for a game, 15. And 4 of those 15 came from a veteran player in Will Anderson. And it's not known for Will to have 4 penalties. 3 of those were offsides. One of those was a personal foul penalty where he just knocked the guy on the ground that was already down. And a couple of those mistakes gave Texas extra life out there on the field. And to me, it was a situation where a guy that, had so much build up this offseason and rightfully earned it because the way he played in the 2021 season, but wanting so badly to get sacks and contend for the Heisman and putting all of this on himself, frustration set in for Will Anderson yesterday that normally we don't see from the former 5-star.
Yeah, I think he brought this up, alluded to this a little bit in his press conference earlier in the week before leading into the game about how he wanted to get that first sack. A player of his caliber, I feel like, when he doesn't put up the numbers he necessarily wants, just wants to be good so bad, and sometimes that can cause some mental mistakes because you're trying a bit too hard. And look, that unnecessary roughness call, I think, was just a big deal of just some frustration, especially from the entirety of the game. Offense not really getting it done, defense struggling at times as well, even though the front played pretty good against the run. But yeah, just the 15 penalties in total, I think it was the most of the Nick Saban era. And it was honestly, we talked about this during our own preview show about how Alabama struggles in these hostile environments and how they had to get that cleaned up from last year, where they showed on numerous occasions they're not able to handle these hostile crowds. And as of right now, they're still not able to.
Justin, as we flip this to you, if you're back on screen with us, just from your perspective, the 15 penalties, and especially going back to the secondary, a group that you covered, Kool-Aid McKinstry, a few of those pass interference calls. Kyrie Jackson, had a call on him. So just what was your thought of the 15 penalties? In your opinion, was it the crowd noise? Was it just lack of communication, lack of execution? I mean, what do you attribute that to when you see Nick Saban obviously frustrated, but 15 penalties, Justin?
Yeah, I think a lot went into those penalties. First, I'm going back. I did hear you guys on first question. I think I kind of lost connection for a little bit. But Bryce Young, I think he just showed what he is, what separates him from other quarterbacks. I think he definitely has that clutch gene. Of course, he's accurate, but when the moment is the biggest, he steps up. And we saw another example of that against Texas. But like what you said, those penalties, I think as far as those offside penalties, it seemed to happen a lot when Texas was in the hurry up offense. It seemed as if Alabama's defense was caught off guard a little bit, trying to get set, specifically when I think Jalen Moody came into the backfield, looked as if he was going to make a big stop on one of Texas's running backs, but Will Anderson was offside. So I saw that constantly in terms of the hurry up offense. Another thing I think it does goes into frustration. I kind of understood why Will Anderson did that a little bit, because the guy was down. The guy was down, but no one touched him. So is he down? We got to make sure he's down. Make sure the whistle. I'm pretty sure he didn't hear the whistle as well. In those situations, you always want to make sure the guy is down. At least grab him like, yo, you can't go nowhere. Let's make sure that this play is dead. So I sort of understood it, but I do feel like you said, Pat, maybe was a bit frustration in terms of how he did it, because he could have easily just walked over and said, hey, let me hold on to you, make sure that the play is dead, make sure the whistle is blown. But he basically smacked the guy from behind, basically hit him pretty good. on that play. So I think it was a mix of that in terms of the offside penalties. Some were disciplined, those face mask penalties. Even there were a couple of face mask penalties that weren't even called on Alabama. So I think it goes with discipline. I think that definitely plays a role in that, but also just that environment, that loud crowd, specifically J.C. Latham, a sophomore offensive lineman, got false start called on him several times. I think it was because of the crowd noise and trying to make adjustments.
And Just was getting into a coffee-filled sermon right there, and connection right there. But I mean, continue what Justin said. Absolutely, Pat. I mean, J.C. Latham, young guy, sophomore, first start in a hostile environment. So the crowd noise kind of got to him. He kind of got to him a little bit. Frustration there on Will Anderson's part, and even frustration on behalf of Dallas Turner when you go back to the hit that was on Quinn Ewers that knocked him out of the game for Texas. A lot of fans looked at that as that's a clean hit. It's a football play. And, Dallas turns to the ref and goes, why is there a 15-yard penalty call on me? Of course, Ewers will be out 4 to 6 weeks because of the hit, but just a lot of frustration there that happened in the matchup. And going from defensive frustration, Pat, to offensive frustration, just offensive line still having some issues there establishing the run game. Jace McClellan had the big 81-yard touchdown run, and we thought, okay, this should pop something off. Early on, Jahmyr Gibbs was getting some decent runs, some good runs. We thought that would pop something off, but Alabama just did not, sustain that. And then, of course, then you had the Texas defensive front that was able to get pressure to Bryce Young. 2 sacks, a few quarterback hurries there. So the offensive line, you're having fans go, why is the issue continuing with not being able to run the football the way we want to, and that pressure still getting to Bryce? So it was a former Alabama offensive lineman, Mike Johnson, who was on that 2009 championship team. He expressed his frustration on social media. Pat, you're an O-line guy. Speak on this.
Look, a lot of the same issues Alabama had a year ago, like we were talking about, the not disciplined play and the penalties and the hostile crowds, they're bleeding over to this year. And the offensive line is just another one of those issues. As of right now, it's still inconsistent, still very inconsistent, especially in the run game. They really need to figure out the interior of that offensive line, because I'm being honest, the tackle is J.C. Latham. I know he had the penalties, but I thought he played pretty good in terms of pass protection.
I thought he did too. I thought Latham was solid. I thought he was solid. My thing is, as much as Nick Saban, and I, for one, will not just sit there and completely go against Coach, but this is my opinion. I know he values Kendall Randolph. I get it. Young man's been here for 6 years, grandpa on the team, and this and that. But when you see how he's the one targeted where defensive linemen feel like we can get through Kendall Randolph, at what point do you go, Randolph, brother, appreciate what you've done, but in playing winning football, we got to have Javion Cohen in here. We got to have somebody in here that's got that nasty streak in them. We love you, Randolph, but we got to go elsewhere on this offensive line.
Well, I think there's going to be a lot of evaluation this week for Alabama's game, and it kind of needs to happen. They need to get a core 5 and just figure it out, have them figure it out together. Because if they're still mixing and matching by the time SEC play rolls around, it's not really ideal especially for your running game. And look, like we brought up the Jace McClellan 80-yard run, the Bryce Young 20-yard scramble. Alabama rushed for 160 yards in the game. It could be misleading in terms of their rushing, but a majority of it came on 2 plays. Outside of that, on their other 22 carries, they got like 60 yards, which is less than 3 yards per carry. So they need to, whether it's Cohen in there full time, and I thought Cohen actually did a bit better of a job, but there's still some miscommunication on the inside. With the pass rush coming through, whether it was between Dalcourt and the guards, or if it was a running back mixing the block. I think Jahmyr Gibbs missed a couple protections, but he's not necessarily the guy you want back there to throw these blocks. He's obviously much more of a pass catcher, but yeah, they need to figure it out. They need to figure it out quick, because it's not going to get any easier for them.
Well, Pat, we know one thing. With Louisiana Monroe on the schedule this upcoming week, Saban will have these guys drilling. They will be drilling in practice this week. And this is the one time I wish we could be out there. But unfortunately, they're not going to have us out there. But going from the offensive line to Bill O'Brien, after week 1 against Utah State, where a lot of the fans were going, okay, he's showing creativity. We're seeing different stuff. We're seeing good stuff. Against Texas, it was kind of back to that vanilla sort of look, and the frustration is now back on the minds of fans. Why is O'Brien doing this? What's going on with the play calling? Why can't we be explosive? What's going on here? So, I mean, Pat, your thoughts there in terms of the overall play calling against a team in Texas that, yes, you don't want to take any team lightly. You don't, but from your perspective, Pat, explain that.
Well, look, and in terms of the play calling, I know it's very easy to just point at Bill O'Brien. There were some frustrating times last season where, the play calling wasn't exactly up to par, but I don't know what you want him to do against Texas. Receivers weren't open downfield. They couldn't run the football. Nothing was working. The guys weren't making plays flat out, and especially when Alabama was in non-favorable field positions. They were inside of their 20 on a couple occasions where Texas special teams actually came up pretty big in terms of the punting game. They had a 60-yard punt that put them deep into their own territory, and then they also had another punt that put them inside the 5, which had that controversial play down there in the end zone. Was Bryce Young's sack, was it intentional grounding or not? It wasn't, so who knows? But hey, I mean, I personally don't know what Bill O'Brien, nothing was working for them. So I don't really think you can put this game on Bill O'Brien in terms of this.
As we now have Justin here in the screen right now, back on with us. So, Justin, flipping this to you, going back defensively, I mean, Quinn Ewers touched up that Alabama secondary. We knew Alabama was going to be tested on the back end, but Quinn Ewers got literally no pressure to him at all. And Xavier Worthy, what a game he was having prior to Ewers getting hurt. Like, those two were connecting. Ewers and Whittington were connecting. And for most people, it was back to the whole Colt McCoy thing. If Colt didn't get hurt, we would have a championship in Texas. Well, if Quinn Ewers didn't get hurt, Texas would have beaten Alabama. What's going to be the thing here to help this secondary, Justin? And a question that Alabama fans are asking, where's Eli Ricks? Because he was not on the field against Texas. I saw one thing where the camera panned to him. He had a towel over his face. But what's it going to take for this secondary, Justin?
Yeah, speaking of Eli Ricks, he was my pick to be a player of the game, but he didn't touch the field. But outside of that, yeah, speaking of that secondary, yeah, Xavier Worthy went to work. He's a speedy wide receiver. I said that if you guys had an opportunity to tune into our watch party, he's one of the fastest wide receivers in college football. He doesn't have a great frame in terms of size, but he's a guy who can get behind the defense. He was torching Alabama's defensive back, their entire secondary, getting behind the safety and the cornerback. One time, Kyrie Jackson was on him one-on-one, easily got behind Jackson, and Jackson had no safety help. So the secondary definitely has some things it has to figure out. I know it's a cornerback competition. I see why it's a cornerback competition. It seems some of they shine at times, and other times it's the element of being a cornerback. You have to have a short memory sometimes, and Xavier Worthy was definitely going to work. Jordan Whittington as well. Alabama was dialing up blitzes on several snaps, but did not get home. I think that's a struggle when it comes to several guys on the defensive side of football. They are not great blitzers, specifically defensive backs. I say this all the time. I think most people do not understand how much Pete Golding and Alabama's defense in general blitzes defensive backs. They just can't find blitzing lanes. They struggle with that. Malachi Moore finally found him a blitz lane, but he missed the quarterback entirely. So I think the Texas offense did a great job, a great game plan by Steve Sarkisian. We all know who Steve Sarkisian is. So he had another great game plan, had an opportunity to get those guys open in space. So unfortunately, Alabama wasn't able to do that on their side of the football. So I guess there is where some of the blame lies in terms of Bill O'Brien. But yeah, Quinn Ewers was going to work, and that argument may have some legs in terms of if he didn't get hurt, the game may have had a different outcome because he was definitely going to work. Even he missed. Matter of fact, he missed some passes, missed some throws to Xavier Worthy when he was in the game. But Worthy was definitely getting open. So in terms of Alabama's defense as secondary, definitely have some things to work on. I think Terry Arnold played really well against Worthy in terms of the cornerbacks who matched up against them. Yeah, I was looking forward to seeing Eli Ricks get on the field. I think he has an elite skill set. I've said it on this podcast a couple of times now. So I'm really interested in seeing how Alabama's cornerback competition, I think it will still be a competition, how it continues to shake out.
So Justin, I want to stick with you right there before we go to Pat. I want to stay right there with you. Texas had a game plan of, we're going to take away 31 and 15. We're going to take away Will Anderson, Dallas Turner. Somebody else come free and beat us. Somebody else come free and get to Quinn Ewers. And there were a few times where Henry To'o got free, couldn't finish. There was a play where Hudson Card was in there. DJ Dale has him. Hudson Card hops out of a DJ Dale tackle and picks up a first down. But my thought is, why can't anyone else get home? I understand Will Anderson, Dallas Turner, your two main fierce guys. I get that. But when you have other guys that can get home, how are they not being able to get home, especially if these are the guys that are having these one-on-one matchups here, Justin?
Yeah, and I think Texas did a great job of neutralizing Will Anderson. We all know who Will Anderson is. Everyone knows who Will Anderson is. So if you are an offensive coordinator, if you are Steve Sarkisian going into that game, he's really familiar with Alabama. I'm not going to let Will Anderson kill my quarterback. I'm not going to let him get free shots, let him get a free pass rush, let him get started, and just let him tee off on my quarterback. So what do? You basically do play action. Let your quarterback roll out, roll away from Will Anderson. Did that several times and was able to find a wide receiver or a receiver pretty easily. Also, I think Will Anderson was chipped a lot. I think the running back did a great job. Texas running backs did a great job of picking up Will Anderson when he was getting free. Even if they did not block him entirely, they slowed him down. That was all it took for Steve Sarkisian's game plan, because they wanted to get the football out very quickly. So there is a way to neutralize guys like Will Anderson. But like you said, Steven, other guys have to make an impact. Kool-Aid McKinstry got free. Malachi Moore, like I said, he got free one time. I think Jalen Moody was able to get back there sometimes. So Pete Golding was dialing up the pressure, but those guys were not getting home. I think that is something that a lot of guys on the defense side of football have to fix.
Yeah, I agree with you, Justin, because I think Alabama actually is getting back there. They just got to finish these plays. And in terms of someone like Will Anderson, I think they need to kind of use him as much more of a distraction, honestly, if he's going to require all this attention. And I think they did this a few times where they ran some stunts to his side. But look, and he didn't have that many flashy sacks, but I mean, he did have one, and it came in the biggest moment of the game when the game really mattered. Alabama's two biggest players, Bryce Young and Will Anderson, made plays. So, look, I think it's not. I know there's a lot of talk out there about the coordinators. I think they're fine. The guys they got to make plays. I think flat out.
One guy defensively that did show up, guys, and made a lot of plays, Jalen Moody. Moody showed up defensively several times. I know a lot of his plays were negated due to penalties. But 42 stuck his nose in a lot of stuff for the second straight week, whether it's big tackle for loss here, quarterback pressure here, big tackle there. And Moody started to get a whole lot more comfortable. And we knew entering year 5 what Moody could bring. I mean, this is a guy that wasn't highly recruited coming out of high school back in 2018. But when he's been on the field, he's made plays. When his number's been called, he's made plays. And I feel like Justin, here's a young man that's getting more and more comfortable in understanding how to play with consistency, how to play with fire. And when it seems like no one else is giving all they got, 42 is giving all he's got.
Yeah, Jalen Moody is definitely making an impact, especially tackling. I think that is something that's so overlooked. It's so simple. I know it's like one of the simplest part of football, but he's making some nice, effective tackles all over the football field, and he's making tackles that are just those effective tackle that gets the guy down, make sure he brings his arm, wrap the guy up, making sure that he takes the guy to the ground. Unfortunately, Henry To'oTo'o was on the wrong side of a couple of Bijan Robinson's run. A couple of guys on Alabama's defense were on the wrong side of Robinson. I said coming into that game that Bijan Robinson, we all know, is arguably the best college football running back at this particular point in time. And he's a grown man running the football. You're going to have to hit him. If you don't, you're going to get stiff armed to the ground, or you're going to get completely ran over, which is what happens to Henry To'oTo'o on one play. But I really like what I've seen from Jalen Moody in terms of sticking his nose in there, taking on blocks, doing a nice stack and shed at times, taking on blocks and getting to the football, making tackles. So I'm really liking what I'm seeing from Jalen Moody. Seems that the Crimson Tide are not afraid to move around some guys at the inside linebacker position, because like people are saying in the chat, we did see Deontay Lawson on a couple of snaps. And even going back to the Utah State game, we saw him get his nose in there, show that he is a physical linebacker as well. So just taking a look at Alabama's linebacker room, I am liking what I'm seeing out of Jalen Moody so far.
So it's something, and I'm going to get you in on this one, Pat. So Justin, at some point, as experienced as Henry To'oTo'o is, and I know fans have split emotions when it comes down to Henry too. He's split down the middle. But at what point could we see, because Kendrick Blackshire is the backup middle linebacker. Is there a point where we could see him even more, especially in those situations where Henry T is on the wrong side of those runs? Could we see a Kendrick Blackshire who wants to thump, who wants to sit there and take you out? Could we see a Blackshire more?
Yeah, I don't think we're at that point yet because of, like you said, what Henry To'oTo'o knows at that middle inside linebacker position. You're going to he's the leader of the defense, because when you just take a look at how Alabama's plays their middle linebacker. So I don't think we're at that point yet in terms of subbing him out because of what he has done. But he's a guy who I feel the Crimson Tide at this point in time will stick with if I had to make an opinion. But they might throw Deontay Lawson in there quite a bit. But I like what I've seen from Jalen Moody. But I wouldn't go that far just yet. But it's something that we could keep our eyes on.
Yeah, no way. No way. That's no. Yeah, but in terms of Jalen Moody, I mean, he looks like that guy's playing fast. He's been in the program for 5 years, and he's playing like he knows exactly what he's doing, and he's the most sure tackler at linebacker I've seen in years at Alabama. I don't think he's an extremely physical player. That guy's playing with his hair on fire right now.
Jalen Moody definitely playing with his hair on fire for the Crimson Tide. And then, of course, you got to look at, normally you don't like seeing the punter out there a lot. That's not the position you want to see out there. But James Burnip, yes, 6 punts, but 3 of his 6 punts down inside the 20. He had 1 punt travel in excess of 50 yards. He did average near 42 yards per punt. So James Burnip, Justin, played a role in helping Alabama win and flipping field position. So big dap to James Burnip. Can we do that?
Yeah, you definitely can. I'm pretty sure his performance has been overlooked. Like you said, looking at the stat sheet, nailing Texas inside the 20-yard line is definitely a goal of any punter every time they get a snap. But I think that another thing was the fact that he was able to get some punts off, because Texas has been successful at blocking punts. Specifically, former Alabama running back Keelan Robinson has come up with several plays in terms of blocking punts for Texas. So his performance may have been overlooked, but he definitely left an impact, like you said, on the stat sheet, and because he was able to get some punts off clean and was not rushed, and Texas did not come up with a block punt.
Who would have thought that the strongest area of Alabama's game in a very close win was going to be the kicking game? And we've left Steven speechless.
You know what? I'm back now. I'm telling you this right now. I didn't see it coming, guys. I didn't see it coming. Now, I will say this. I still owe the Reichert family a fruit basket, because Will Reichert is that dude, okay? 52-yard field goal, made that. 33-yarder to win the game, made that. So Will Reichert, yes. But James Burnip, I got to give him his, because last season we were all kind of wondering, is everything all right with Burnip? Is he really the guy? I mean, we've been trying to see. You're not going to have a J.K. Scott walk through here every year. That's not going to happen. But for what you do get, you want to see some form of positive consistency. And Saturday, we did see Burns, like Justin said, he got punts off. They were not blocked. They had some hang time on him. And he prevented the return men of Texas from getting good returns off these punts. And that's all you can basically ask for. So, as Pat said, coming in, did we really think that the kicking game would have this much of an impact? Absolutely not. But hey, it did. And thankfully, it impacted Alabama positively. Go ahead there, Pat.
Yeah, absolutely. That had a huge impact, the special teams kicking game. And look, you better send multiple fruit baskets to the Reichard family for doing that, because of the way he did that. I mean, Will Reichard, in his several years of being in the program, he has completely erased any sort of concerns from the clutch kicking game for Alabama. It really has been a dramatic turnaround since he's joined.
Absolutely. So we're getting some thoughts here, guys, in the chat and from a lot of our fans here. Listen to the BAMA Elite podcast here, Touchdown Alabama Magazine, right here on YouTube. And a lot of the conversation has been geared toward Brian Branch, who had a strong game. Brian Branch played well here against Texas, and Branch is a Swiss Army knife. We know he can play safety, he can play star, he can play money. He worked at corner in fall camp. So, Justin, here's a thought for you. Does Alabama need to look at Brian Branch at corner for moving forward? Could that be an option?
I don't think they're going to move him to corner. I don't see that happening just based on the guys that they have right now at corner. I don't see them making that drastic move just yet. He has some experience at cornerback, but I do feel he is a better safety, just the range that he plays with and how he's able to play all over the field. So I wouldn't change on Brian Branch to cornerback at the moment. I'm really interested in seeing if I had to choose a guy on Alabama roster to get on the field at the cornerback position, my pick would be Eli Ricks. So I'm just going to pay attention to how they play that position moving forward. It really surprised me that he did not get a single snap, if I'm not mistaken, throughout that entire game against Texas.
Of course, we already got Willie351 in the chat going Branch at corner. Nah, man. I'm not saying Saban going to do it. I'm just making a suggestion because Saban did say Brian Branch got some work at corner in fall camp. So in case it may be needed, Branch has been getting some work there. So, hey, we shall see. But I continue with this defense here. Pat, you mentioned that the guys just have to make plays. The guys have to make plays. The guys have to finish plays. You're not putting this on Pete Golding or anybody on the defensive coaching staff for that matter. These guys just have to make plays. And I go back to the defenses in years past, though there were those guys that took it upon themselves to make those plays. And when you look at the defense now, you see a Will Anderson, you see, a Dallas Turner, and then you may see one more guy that you trust. But, who else in this room that you trust, Pat, that's got to finish and that's got to show that mentality for everybody else to finish? Who behind a Dallas, behind a Will? We see a Jalen Moody starting to grow into that type of a role. But who else do you trust to finish on that defense?
Well, I mean, I think they trust the entire defense. If I'm being honest, there were a couple. They do have to finish on some of these sacks, but the front played pretty good, honestly, in terms of the run game, especially. They completely took away Bijan Robinson's carries. He was not a factor in the run game. He had a 42-yard pass, but other than that, there really wasn't much that he did. So I think on a handful of key plays, whether it's the third down scramble from Hudson Card, who was limping all the way there, or just getting Malachi Moore finishing the sack. It's just a couple plays like that they got to clean up and finish. I think they will, because they are good up front. Alabama's good up front. They got to figure it out at corner, if I'm being honest. And they have the talent. They have 1,000,000 5-stars, and God knows how many other talented players back there. Those guys got to figure it out, because once they get some sort of consistency in the cornerback room and they kind of unleash this pass rush here, I think this defense is going to be good. I mean, they held Texas to 19 points? You're going to win games when you're doing that. And I know Quinn Ewers got hurt. What if Quinn Ewers kept playing? Who knows? That's not the game that we're playing. He got hurt. He got out. So I think Alabama's defense they just got to finish plays. I think they're going to be fine. They just got to figure out the cornerback position.
Yeah, I definitely. Yeah, I agree with you on that, Pat. I think the biggest thing that a lot of people are overlooking, Texas played good. I think a lot of people do not want to say that. If just looking at this game, I think a lot of people just don't want to say that Texas played good. Texas is better than we thought they were.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that people do not want to say. We can at least give Texas their credit. They have some talented guys on both sides of the football. Worthy, easily, I think one of the best wide receivers in college football will be as he continues to develop, continues to show more. This guy has great speed, elite speed. He's one of the top wide receivers coming out of his recruiting class in terms of speed. Quinn Ewers is one of the top quarterbacks coming out of his particular recruiting class. Bijan Robinson, arguably the best running back in college football right now. So Texas has some talent, of course. I think with them being unranked, I'm thinking that does not get talked about enough. I think Texas did play a really good game, in my opinion. Steve Sarkisian had a great game plan also as well.
Yeah, and Sarkisian was great. Let's be honest. He was in his bag throughout the entire game. And look, I know Alabama fans are very reactionary. If they have a close game, it's Alabama's fault. They suck. But what if Texas goes on it's week 2? What if Texas goes and wins the Big 12? It's looking like a little bit better of a win here if they go on ahead and win the Big 12. So I think it's way too early to be making all these claims, calling for people's heads here.
Too early to be making all these claims, Pat. But you know how the world goes. It's if Alabama wins in the close one, the world is falling. And if Alabama loses, the world is falling. So people make claims, but what makes it good for us is we get to have conversations about this and engage the people who are making all of these claims. But at the end of the day, Alabama got the win, number one. And number two, this provides Nick Saban and the staff with a lot to work on. A lot to work on where the offensive line is concerned. Like you mentioned, Pat, can you get 5 guys and just stick with them? That's number one. Number two, the defensive secondary. Can you find your best 2 corners, stick with them? And then wide receivers, guys who are able to get free and create separation. And here's the question of where's Tyler Harrell once again, because people are asking. Hopefully he gets healthy, finds his way out there. Christian Leary finds his way out there. I know Isaiah Bond came so close to making a catch. Bryce Young on the run. Isaiah Bond, the ball just out of his reach right there. Could not bring it in. If he would have brought that in, it would have been a big play. You know, Kobe Prentice had a drop in the game where if he sits down in the hole in the zone, don't move, could have been a big play right there. But they're freshmen. They're young. They'll get there. They'll grasp that. But the big thing here is getting the receivers that can get free, because Texas defensive secondary, as much as people did not talk about them all week long, they did a strong job in just not allowing the receivers to get free. And then Alabama's receivers, I don't know if they were lining up wrong and they were not getting off the press. They were not getting off the route. It's just they could not get free.
Yeah, I think Alabama's offense is missing that guy who can take the top off the defense, like that threat who can always go 80 yards down the field, like the Jamison Williams type. We keep bringing up. Tyler Harrell still hurt. JoJo Earl still hurt. Those are 2 fastest guys out there. So that really kind of restricts you, especially when you can't really get open in the intermediate routes. And that's why I think the offense, especially in the passing game throughout the entirety of the game, really struggled to find separation and get open and get some chunk plays going until late in the game. So I think if Alabama can just find those players, whether it's those guys who need to get healthy or maybe get someone like a Christian Leary involved. I know we brought it up on one of our last shows that he's a speedster who can really get down there. So I think once Alabama kind of figures out that area, it'll open up more things in the passing game.
Yeah, this the disadvantage of watching the game on TV. Sometimes you guys get a bigger advantage in terms of when you go to the game. You guys can see the wide receivers route develop a lot more than what we are seeing on TV, because the TV cameras follow the football, obviously. So like you said, Stephen, we are not entirely sure about what happened in terms of those wide receivers creating separation. But if you had a guy who can take the top off of an defense, that stretches the defense a lot, and it causes a lot of attention to be directed to that particular player, specifically to Texas. You have Xavier Worthy. They have a guy who can stretch a defense out, and he stretched Alabama's defense out entirely when he was on the football field. So a guy like Tyler Harrell will definitely be a threat to do that with that type of speed. Unfortunately, Alabama hasn't. I guess some of those guys are maybe a little bit too young because Prentice does run a 4.3 40. I'm not sure if they don't feel confident with him catching the football deep, but he's a guy with a lot of speed. Isaiah Bond, they did give him an opportunity. Unfortunately, he tried to make a bit of a tough catch, but that is a catch that has to be caught in that particular point in the game. But he is still growing. But a guy like Tyler Harrell who can take the top off of a defense is definitely a guy Alabama could use in this particular point in time, because I'm pretty sure just taking a look. Of course, like I said, we are not at the game, so we can't really see how the entire battle between the cornerbacks and the wide receivers on last Saturday. But just taking a look at what we do know, just taking a look at like I'm always going to say, I think this is my motto. Football is just really simple. If they are shutting Alabama down like that, I'm pretty sure they are comfortable, confident, and they're not using a lot of energy to take care of that.
Hopefully we get to see Tyler Harrell at some point in the season. Hopefully we get to see an update on Tyler Harrell. The young man had the foot issue in the preseason camp coming over from Louisville. But we got a super chat here from Kevlar, the welder. Reclaim your brain. Kevlar throwing in that $9.99 in the super chat. Appreciate that from Kevlar. He writes in, Roll Tide. Texas should have been ranked entering the game. All the talent and great coaching, and we're magically unranked. That was extremely fishy to me. Of a team will only get better. He was referring to Texas and the great job that Steve Sarkisian and the Longhorns did there. But like I mentioned, hopefully we'll get some information on Tyler Harrell. He'll make his way back soon because Alabama needs him and that wide receiver room to stretch out opposing defenses. But guys, this week here before we sign off, as we look at Louisiana Monroe, what needs to be worked the most? I know a lot of things need to be worked, a lot of things. But in terms of order of importance, starting this off with Pat, what needs to be worked the most in terms of order of importance here?
You know me, Steven, the run game. They got to figure it out, because if you have a good running game, it'll help everything else on your football team. It gives your defense a break to get extra time to figure stuff out if there are breaks in coverage or if they need to clean anything up on their side of the football. A good run game, and it also helps set up the pass. So figuring out the interior offensive line play and getting this run game going, because their running back room has turned into one of their deepest areas of positions on the team, and they got to find a way to utilize it. And it starts up front with those guys. So they got to figure out this running game.
Yeah, I think the run game may be the focal point for this game against Louisiana Monroe. Texas blew out Louisiana Monroe before they played Alabama, so I don't think this is going back to Utah State. We're probably not going to be able to pull a lot from this game, but a consistent run game is something that we can pull from in terms of how things are going. I think the run game is something to pay attention to as well, but with it being Louisiana Monroe, maybe a good opportunity to test some guys out, see if they can fit into the rotation. But I don't know how much we will learn, but the run game could be one of those places where we can learn something.
We'll have all of our eyes then on the running backs in this offensive line this week in practice. Crimson Tide returning to Bryant-Denny Stadium in Tuscaloosa on next Saturday to take on Louisiana Monroe. But you're checking out the BAMA Standard. And before we wrap things up, got to remind you guys, when you're not listening to the BAMA Standard, we encourage you to listen to us. Doing a great job.
Standard. We're the BAMA Elite, Steven. You're getting your shows mixed up, man.
If you're not listening to the BAMA
I know you do like 6 podcasts for us, but when you're rocking with us, just represent us,
I'm trying to, Pat. I got a million things in my head right now. But when you're not listening to the BAMA Elite, appreciate that, Pat. And we want you checking us out because Just does a tremendous job on the recruiting trail. Of course, Pat does his thing, breaking news reporter for TDA. And when he's not doing that, he's handling the stuff over there in Las Vegas for us. But when you're not checking us out here, the BAMA Elite, you go to or tune into the Big Game College Football Podcast Network and audio stream. You can check out the best college football coverage in the South right there. But you've been listening, folks, to the Bama Elite Touchdown Alabama Magazine on a Sunday, recapping the Bama-Texas matchup, breaking down what we saw, what needs to improve, what needs to get better. And until Thursday, folks, we will see you soon.